All right, guys, we just want to welcome back to the Everything College Football podcast. Today, me and Nick here, we're doing our preview and prediction for West Virginia versus Penn State. Nittany Lions 20-point favorites, 53.5 is the total. 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time on primetime NBC, live from Beaver Stadium in University Park. Looking at this West Virginia offense, this is a unit that certainly really wasn't all that bad last year, Nick. 49th in scoring offense, just shy of 400 yards as well. I thought they had a pretty admirable ground game as well. And that's going to be the key here for this offense. Look at Garrett Green, a guy who was always provided value as a tough-nosed runner, but really hasn't brought much to the table in terms of being an effective passer. Obviously, this is a very thin quarterback group with JT Daniels departing, but I feel like they're going to really look to pound the rock on the ground. CJ Donaldson, a punishing contact runner, some good patience for being such a young guy. Phenomenal downhill with some nice speed for his size of 6'2", 240. Justin Johnson, I think, is quite good. He did very well in his 98 touches a season ago. I don't expect the West Virginia passing attack to really be all that great this year. They had some guys in the portal. Devin Carter, one of them, Deshaun Polk. These guys really didn't produce all that much, though. Carter's really just a short area pass catcher. He's going to be a good guy at the Z. EJ Horton from Marshall really didn't do much. Cortez Braham, 6'2", 198, only caught a few balls last season. Jeremiah Aaron, another veteran, same goes for him. So the returning production really isn't great. I think it's a solid group overall, but nothing too special. I don't think they're exactly going to alleviate the passing attack much. I think they're going to come into this game and they're going to try to run the ball behind a phenomenal offensive line, which I'll allude to in a second.
This is a very good running back unit. And a very good unit overall in terms of attacking on the ground. If West Virginia is going to win this game, and they're going to win a lot of games this year, it's going to rely on the running game. They're going to have to find good balance in the running attack. Garrett Green is a very good running back on the ground. He has nice speed, good burst, good cuts as a quarterback. I like him to use his legs a whole lot this year. I think that's their best opportunity. I think the unit also has some nice deep players. CJ Donaldson's a nice hard-hitting player. Looked good as a true freshman last year. He steps in as a sophomore, looking to improve his role and be involved more. Justin Johnson Jr. as well, is a little deeper down the depth chart. Jalen Anderson has some talent as a redshirt sophomore. He had some good experience last year. And like you said, this is a very solid offensive line that we're going to talk about in a second here that can really block and hold down the trenches for these guys.
They're going to be facing a really impressive Notre Dame defensive line, but I think they're happy with who they have. Doug Nestor looks like he's going to slot in that right tackle. Zach Frazier figures to be one of the nation's top centers. Thomas Remack didn't allow much last year in terms of pass protection. And Wyatt Millen, this guy was a good left tackle, didn't allow a single sack, that is 6'6", 308. These guys are all, 300-plus pounds, including Nestor, who's 6'7", 320. Very suitable interior offensive line for this football team. Nestor, if he has to play on the interior in this game, he certainly can. Brandon Yates, he was a bit of a liability last year. He figures to be the right guard. I think skill and size is a plus for this offensive line. One of the nation's better units, but when you're one-dimensional, I guess you could say, going on the road in Penn State, that's really going to be hard, Nick. So they have to be able to find some passing plays in the back end, and I would be much more confident in their ability to do so if this offensive line is cooking and they're pushing the piles.
I'm excited for this offensive line. I think it's a very good unit, very underrated unit in college football. A lot of talent. Wyatt Millen at left tackle, fantastic player. Doug Nestor, kind of move him around. A senior, has good experience, a real leader for this team. Probably going to see him at right tackle in this game, potentially move him into right guard. Brandon Yates, a very good guard, though. It can be tough to move him around. Thomas Remack as well, good left guard. Zach Frazier at center, a very nice natural-born leader, solid player. Good depth as well. There's some nice players. Nick Malone at left tackle, nice depth there. Bryce Briggs as well, left guard. The left side has really good depth overall. That's going to be the key for this West Virginia offense, is can they battle in the trenches and win the battle against a really talented Penn State defensive line? It's going to try and come after them at all sides of the ball. I think this West Virginia offensive line is very good. I just think they're going to be a little outclassed here against a Penn State defensive line that we'll get to in a little bit later. That is fantastic.
Look at the Penn State offense. I think this is James Franklin's best unit since 2016, where they had Saquon Barkley, Mike Gesicki, Chris Godwin. I think Drew Aller, it's his time to shine. How much freedom is he gonna have in his first career start here? We always knew that Sean Clifford kind of had this offense's abilities capped. We said that, I think, coming into the last 2 years, and he performed about exactly the same. He did put up some good numbers against Ohio State, but his interceptions also caused him to fumble that game away late in the contest. Drew Aller, former 5-star, some great arm talent, some really good size as well, 6'5", 238, prototypical build of a traditional pocket passer. And his arm, he flicks it with ease, with some elite velocity. And, he's going to have a nice little receiving core to work with. Dante Cephas, a transfer, strong possession pass catcher. It's very dangerous in space. Keandre Lambert-Smith has some good vertical speed. Harrison Wallace was a 6th leading pass catcher as a 4-star true freshman last year. Blake McClain didn't really do much at FSU, but is a physical presence. Amari Evans is a younger piece that might get on the field in this game. And then Theo Johnson at tight end quietly had some good production. So I think this receiving core is certainly going to be more then admirable for Penn State, Andrew Aller. What are the expectations for him in his first career start here?
Drew Aller has a lot of expectations coming into this season. Some people say he could potentially be a Heisman sleeper. People are loving him this offseason. Apparently, he looked very good in spring practice and the spring game as well. Very talented quarterback, great in the pocket, good size on him, good, former recruit out of high school. Has a very good backfield to work with as well, and a very good wide receiving room. Harrison Wallace is a good player at the Z. Blake McLean as well could be involved in that position as well. Keandre Lambert-Smith in the slot. Very nice speed, good leadership there with him. Dante Cephas coming over at the X, a good player to add. Theo Johnson, a very talented tight end as well. The running back room will certainly help him as well. This is a very good offense that has some nice talented pieces.
Yeah, when you talk about expectations, a lot of people last year were curious what this running back duo would do. Nicholas Singleton, Katron Allen, and they flat out blew them out the water, I'd say. 1,061 yards, 12 scores for Singleton, Allen, 867, another 10 touchdowns. These guys were phenomenal last year. Singleton, he has some nice size, 6 foot, 219, really allows him to attack inside with confidence. Some great speed on the edge as well, like his strength and toughness combo. Allen, he showcases great leg drive, some nice patience and vision, a little bit smaller, 5'11", 201. And then Trey Potts also arrives from Minnesota. This is one of the nation's best backfields. They're incredibly deep here, Nick, and I think the balance for Penn State this year, they're just foaming at the mouth because they think it's going to be incredibly dynamite this season.
Nicholas Singleton certainly showing shades of Saquon Barkley. Really good freshman year for him. Such a talented player. Love the speed. Like you said, the size is fantastic. Ketron Allen as well. He would be a great number one back for a lot of teams in college football. He's your number two back here. Really talented 1-2 punch there. Trey Potts coming from Minnesota. Great add. Nice depth. Good on third down. Kind of get him involved. And they also have two true freshmen that are very talented in Cam Wallace and London Montgomery that may be involved as well. I mean, this is a 5-back deep running room that has just so much talent top to bottom. Singleton's going to absolutely continue to take college football by storm. He's such a talented back. He's going to be really good this year.
The offensive line was certainly an inconsistent unit at times last year, but I think we're going to see great improvements this year, and it's going to start in this game. Fashanu, people consider him one of the nation's top tackles, especially when it comes to being a draft buzz. Some great lateral agility at 6'8", 313, some nice strength in his lower half. He doesn't showcase great power in the running game, so that's something people are going to look for because he's not exactly a people mover, but he's great as a pass blocker. We'll see how his debut game goes. Hunter Norzad wasn't all that great left guard. He was all banged up last year, though, showcasing his toughness. When Treadwell played a couple games at right guard, and we also had his fair share of struggles. Sal Wormley had 25 pressures allowed. Viga Lona is 6'4", 352. They have plenty of upside with him, they think. He's going to battle for one of those guard spots. Caden Wallace and Drew Shelton. Caden, he has a leg up in terms of experience. They might just go with that rotational approach, though, at right tackle. I think there's plenty of experience over on this offensive line. They do lose Juice Scruggs in the middle, though. I think we're going to see great improvements this year, and this isn't exactly a tough matchup for him. But we're going to be looking to see how Fashanu does in terms of, run blocking and how the rest of these guys kind of gel together in this game.
I'll certainly have my eye on this offensive line for this Penn State team early on. I want to see how they look game one. Are they comfortable? Are they able to make this rotational pieces work? Fashanu obviously is a very talented player. We're going to talk about him a whole lot in the draft cycle. I'm very excited to see what he can do this year and boost his draft stock. I think the right side worries me. I think Wormley and Wallace, that are currently pegged the starters right now, concern me a little bit. Drew Shelton might get kicked out to right tackle. I think he could be good there. The rotational approach is certainly going to be something that James Franklin and co are going to go after this year. I think it's going to kind of be a good idea to see what type of piece you can plug in here and who looks best in that role.
And this West Virginia defense has a tall task of slowing those guys down. 65th against the run last year. It's going to be a lot harder this season. Dante Sills, Jordan Jefferson depart. Sean Martin, he was third on the team in tackles for loss behind those two guys with 8. Also had 4 sacks. He's going to be the go-to guy here on this defensive line. The rest of the unit really has to catch up, though. It's guys like Mike Lockhart, who's a veteran, Edward Vestarnine, Jared Bartlett, who at times has been a good producer in the past. He's been around the program a long time, certainly expecting him to step up this season. Defensive line, I think, is a below average unit. It's really going to struggle against the run here, but they might just have a shot if these linebackers can really step up. Guys like Lee Kabogba, who was one of the top team leaders in sacks last season. Jario Ferreras, Rasher sophomore, is really going to have to step up in this game. I mean, there's a lot of youth on this defense, at least in the middle. I would say the linebacking core certainly I'm less than thrilled with. And the defensive line as well. These guys have some players who have some nice run stopping skills, but the 2 players that they lose certainly is not very helpful. I do think the size is certainly going to be a plus for them, though, because they do have some impressive players in that regard. But overall, the middle of the defense, I think they're happy with the experience. But playmaking needs to tick up a bit, though, and they need to get some of these other guys on the field. Lee Dixon, you saw about 200 snaps last year. He's going to play a big role this year. What's the expectations for this front 7 in this game? Because last year they allowed, an absurd amount of points per game. 33 of them, that was 116th nationally. If these guys can step up, they can really get that number down significantly.
This is a unit that is certainly concerning going against a running back room for Penn State that has so many different weapons they can use. Sean Martin's a very good player, a nice experienced junior on the edge. I want to see him come off potentially the left side of the field this year. I think he's such a talented player. Good burst on him. Mike Lockhart, he could potentially step up at nose tackle. Good player, nice size on him. Edward Vernstein as well at defensive tackle, nice player, move him around potentially as well. Jared Barlett could be potentially involved, have a decent season. Lee Kapogba is a very good linebacker, nice player, great senior leader. He's a very talented player. I like him a lot. I think he's a very underrated player in college football, not get enough buzz. This front seven has some talented pieces in Martin and Kapogba, but overall I think they're just a step behind a lot of the teams in the Big 12 and in the Big 10 here. I think they're going to be outclassed by what is a pretty strong Penn State offense.
I certainly think the secondary, though, was a bit of an edge for him. Obviously, one of the nation's top DBs, and Aubrey Burks at safety, was an elite player in coverage. He did some damage against the run as well. Marcus Floyd, a veteran who they're expecting to be better. They brought in some competition, though. Anthony Wilson from Georgia Southern, Keyshawn Cobb, he was a great run defender for Buffalo. And they also added Beanie Bishop from Minnesota. He's certainly going to make an impact. He was a phenomenal player for them in the slot last season. We'll see what his role is this season. Andrew Wilson-Lamp, he was an above-average player in coverage, only a handful of games for him, though. They had one of the nation's top pass defenses back in 2020, so they know how to coach him up here in the secondary. And even though the Penn State receiving core is a good one, I don't know if they're really going to be able to expose them at least early on in this game without that play action and that run game going. Could be wrong, Nick, but I think at least early on in this game, this secondary is going to come to play, and they're going to be able to show some heat that's going to allow these guys up front to try and get after the run a little bit more.
This is a good secondary unit that has some nice players. Audrey Burks is a fantastic player at safety, very good player, one of the best players at free safety in the nation. Marcise Floyd as well is another good player. Andrew Wilson-Lamp is a very good player at cornerback. He could be involved and move him around, solid player. Nice depth here in the transfers. They add some decent players, Keyshawn Cobb, Anthony Wilson, Montrell Miller as well. All solid adds. Beanie Bishop was a really good add at right cornerback. This secondary unit is good. I'd be willing to say they potentially have the edge on Penn State in that department. This is a very good secondary unit. They'll be good against the pass in this game, but I think they're going to struggle against the run will be their downfall.
We don't want to jump the gun because they were 111th last year against the pass, but I definitely think some of these new pieces, along with the returnees, are certainly going to allow them to at least crack the top 50 this year. Some massive improvements expected from the WVU secondary. Looking at the Penn State defense, this is a unit that was just flawless last year's team. The defensive line looking to really assert their dominance early in this tough matchup. Last year, they got absolutely embarrassed by Michigan. They gave up 400-plus rushing in that one. After that, they're pretty good on the ground the rest of the season. They even played Ohio State, gave up less than 100 in that one. They only allowed 150 two more times on the year, and they didn't allow over 200 once outside of that Michigan game. So this run defense, they really just had a poor day in Ann Arbor. But they're incredibly deep here. Chop Robinson, 10 tackle for loss last year, phenomenal player for them. They have pretty good depth on this defensive line overall. Hakeem Beeman, defensive tackle, was solid. Devon Ellies, another redshirt senior. Zane Durant, a player they're expecting to continue to step up, and Keziah Izzard as well. So they have some good depth here. Dennis Sutton, another defensive end. He's a rising sophomore, was a former 5-star as well. They're looking to unleash him this year. Adiza Isaac as well was a pretty respectable producer for this team with 11 TFL. I mean, it's very good numbers from these young players last year. They will really step up. This defensive line, Nick, they're going against a really good offensive line and a team that's going to look to pound the rock with Donaldson and Garrett Green and their physicality and their size. Who do you think has the edge overall?
It's a very interesting battle. I'm inclined to say that Penn State has just a slight edge here, but it is a very interesting battle. You really are flipping a coin between that offensive line, defensive line. Chop Robinson, a player I'm very high on. Expect him to have a really large season this year. Expect him to be a huge producer for this team coming off the left side of the edge. Very good player, Hakeem Behrman as well in the interior. Devon Alias as well, another great player on the interior. Adiza Isaac is a very good producer, nice hard-hitting player. Those four guys are very talented. They should come into their own throughout the season. This Penn State defensive line is going to be one of the best in the Big Ten.
Coming into the last year, we said that the linebacking core is going to be a concern for Penn State, but in 2023, we figured they would probably have it figured out. Well, we were pretty wrong last year, Nick, but I think coming into this year, we're certainly right in the point of this is going to be a forceful unit. Carter, as a freshman, stepped up last season, 56 tackles, 10.5 TFL, 6.5 sacks, had a pair of forced fumbles as well. Kurtz Jacobs, a guy that we last year said was probably the only leader at linebacker, and they needed other people to step up. He also had 4 sacks on top of 52 tackles. Now, I'm just interested to see who's going to step up middle linebacker. Kobe King or Tyler Eldston, those guys didn't exactly perform great last season. I think this year the competition between the two with the experience is certainly going to be highly beneficial for this linebacking core. But I'd really like to see someone step up in the middle and separate themselves as the enforcer for this elite defense.
Abdul Carter looked good as a true freshman last year. Good player coming in here, sophomore year. Expect a nice bump out of him. Kobe King is a good player as well. I like to see him rotate with Tyler Eldson. I think the two of them together are two solid pieces. You can rotate them at middle linebacker. Curtis Jacobs is a great leader, good hard-hitting linebacker who has some nice experience. Keon Wiley as well as a redshirt freshman that has some potential as well. This is a unit that has some depth to it. They add some nice pieces in their recruiting class as well. Overall, I like this middle of the defense a lot. I think there's a very talented number of players here. They're very hard-hitting linebackers.
Looking at the secondary, we talked about the West Virginia receiving core, how it's just a pretty overall solid group. It doesn't seem like you're going to be able to expose many opponents, and I don't expect that to be any different here in the Nittany Lions game. Kalen King, he's a phenomenal player, one of the top corners in college football, great instincts, phenomenal processor who's patient, ball skills check out, some very fluid hips for him. He had, I think, 18 pass breakups a season ago. Johnny Dixon, he's going to occupy the other corner spot. Daquan Hardy, he's probably going to be the nickel, but he also provides some solid depth if they need him to be one of the corners. I'm very interested to see the safety group, though, Nick, because I certainly think that Keaton Ellis, Jalen Reed are solid players, but I'm incredibly high on the younger guys, and Kevin Winston Jr. and Zakee Wheatley. I'm very interested to see the role they play in this game, especially early on in the season as a whole. I think those two will end up being the starting safeties come the end of the season, and if they do, and those guys can really start to click and live up to expectations, this secondary might be better than it was a season ago when they had Joey Porter on the other side of King. It's certainly going to be hard to be better than they were last year, but that's going to be the expectation for me. This is going to be a dominant focal point for this defense. They're going to try and ride it all the way to a potential playoff berth.
Very dominant team. Kalen King, great in the secondary. Jalen Reed, really solid as well. Keaton Ellis is a very good player. Johnny Dixon, good slot in there at right cornerback, very solid player. Cam Miller, a sophomore. Kevin Winston Jr., a sophomore as well, that could be involved. Good players. They also added some transfers here and there. Elliot Washington's a nice true freshman they bring in here as well. Zion Tracy can be involved as well. This is a deep unit that has a lot of different pieces, and Kalen King is just one of the best in the nation. Very talented player to have at cornerback.
Tail of the tape, I think Penn State has the edge across the board other than up front. Obviously, they do have one of the nation's top tackles in Fashanu, though. But I think overall, in terms of size and skill and overall, just experience, the offensive line for West Virginia need to show them the respect, led by Zach Frazier and Doug Nestor. I think the secondary potentially you could maybe give them a nod to, but not many teams this year will have the edge in the back end over Penn State, even though they do have some solid players that could potentially really make an impact in this game. How do you feel about this, Nick? Because obviously when you compare the rosters next to each other, Penn State has a clear edge in all areas, but that offensive line, if they can perform well, they can completely blow this game up.
I think the secondary is close. Certainly there is a potential to give it West Virginia a nod there. I think there are some nice talented players, but Kalen King kind of is that X factor. The offensive line, I do think it belongs to West Virginia. Very talented unit. Penn State obviously is a better team on paper here. A lot of talent in Happy Valley this year and high expectations, but this West Virginia team is no slouch. They're a physical Big 12 unit that's looking to have a good year and try and save Neil Brown's job.
Looking at the final thoughts in the prediction, I think for West Virginia, you just got to get up to a fast start, make this team feel the pressure. A lot of expectations this year in Happy Valley. If they can establish that ground game, this is going to be a long fourth quarter game for Penn State. Too, they can have these fans on their heels, biting their fingernails all game long. Force the nearest passing attack into some long distances for Penn State and get Burks away from the box. Aubrey Burks obviously is going to be a forceful run defender, but they don't want him to be up there one bit. So obviously you want to get your deep passing game going a little bit. I think it's just going to be a barrage here by Penn State. I think it'll be a close game early. West Virginia is going to look to establish the line of scrimmage with their O-line, and I think they might even score on their first drive of the game. I think Penn State, James Franklin, once he calms these guys down, they're going to start playing the level they're capable of. They're going to slow down the run, and that's going to make this 49ers passing attack into some peril because I don't think they're going to be able to keep up one bit. And then I think Penn State with that balanced offense, they're eventually going to be just too much for West Virginia. Pretty lengthy score for me, 42-17. Just as bad for you, Nick, 49-20. Neil Brown, though, coaching out of desperation, might have some tricks up his sleeve.
Certainly is a wide score there. I do predict a huge win for Penn State, 29-point win, covering the 20.5 spread, depending on what book you get it at. But I think this game has potential to be close early, and West Virginia could certainly be winning this game at halftime if they have the tempo early on. I just don't think they have enough in their tank to fully compete with this Penn State team for an entire game here. I think they're going to it's going to be loud at Happy Valley. It's going to be rocking, Saturday night primetime national television at NBC. NBC picking up a Big Ten game for the first time in a very long time with a Big Ten host hosting a Big 12 team. A lot of eyes are going to be on this game. It's one of the more interesting games on the slate in the evening on Saturday. It's a very interesting game, in my opinion. You don't see these two teams playing a whole lot. I think the Mountaineers could certainly be involved early and get some nice points on the ground and pick up some huge yards early on and get involved with C.J. Donaldson, hitting the ground, hitting those holes early and giving this Penn State defensive line a little bit of trouble. But I think they just have too much talent in the Nittany Lions for this Mountaineers team that is really kind of struggling here and looking to find direction. And Neil Brown trying to save his job. 49-20 is the score for me. High expectations for Penn State this year, and certainly a 29-point win would really kick off could be a great season for Penn State.
If they somehow find a way to lose this game because it's college football and anything happens, I'll be wildly shocked. Don't think that West Virginia will be able to compete for 60 minutes. As always, Nick, appreciate you joining me. Great way to get this year started.
Super excited for this game. Really unique game. Excited to see how it goes.
Make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe. See you next time.